Aloha and welcome to the Lemuria Rose Priestess podcast, where we discuss the feminine spiritual path, what it means to be a Sophia Christ initiate, and how we're weaving ancient priestess temple arts into modern day life. I'm your host, Celeste Glus, Oracle of Lemuria Rose Temple, creatrix behind the Sophia School of Feminine Initiatory Arts, and Lemurian Healing Arts Mentor. Let's get into it. Hello, my loves, and welcome. Today's just one of those days where I need to jump in here and give you a little message that's like really almost yelling in my ears. And I want to share that as soon as I pressed record. Today is May 11th, and it is currently 11:11, and we just passed Mother's Day weekend. And this says a lot about what this simple yet profound yet very clear message is for today, which is really becoming the mother of our creation, really becoming the mother of the life and this divine soul mission, not just the life, the higher soul expression that we came here to be. And I'm pretty sure that I can speak for the majority of us here that there is something inside of us, very deep within our hearts and with our essence, that desires to embody the divine, that desires to answer the call of the highest orders of light, of the highest embodiment of crystalline consciousness, whatever your verbiage or language is for the embodiment of ascension, divine feminine ascension, really grounding the spiritual path as an embodied way of life. And this to me is the representation of the mother and the esoteric principles that come behind the essence of the mother and creation, which I went really deep inside lineages of Mu. Like, what is that all about? The mother lineage, the importance of understanding creation as a wholeness of a concept, not just this sort of passive understanding that we see the feminine as. And so today, I want to share with you what is actually holding back the majority of women. I can also say men, but of course, the majority of people I work with are women on the spiritual path, really looking to embrace a very practical, embodied approach to the ascension, spiritual, alchemical, Gnostic path. Okay, so the principal mistake that is really holding back women from becoming the ultimate mother, of course, not in the physical sense, but the mother of her crystalline consciousness, the vessel, the jar, the temple that holds the highest crystalline consciousness. The number one mistake that women are doing is unconsciously following or taking on masculine traditions as their primary spiritual practice. This is huge, and I want to be super clear that the majority of women who come to me, who have also studied and have mentors and have really been on this spiritual journey, are still taking on the traditions, practices, and way of thinking that was passed on through masculine traditions. So what does that mean? I can tell you from firsthand experience, because this was my biggest hurdle on this path, really understanding the difference, the major, huge, life-changing difference between authentically embodying a feminine spiritual journey versus unconsciously taking on masculine traditions which strip us from the embodiment journey or separate life from the physical experience. So let me just break this down a little bit, because if women are not overcoming this hurdle, then there's going to be a huge wall that you're just never going to be able to break down. And I've been working a lot with women on this subject, so this is where I really want to get this point across. If in your body or in your consciousness or in your way of thinking, you still believe or you still think that you have a spiritual practice and then you have your life, that is the number one signal that you have unconsciously inherited a masculine approach to spirituality. Again, what does that mean? If you are sitting down and meditating for extended periods of time, if you are reaching for tools, crystals, affirmations, anything outside of your human physical experience, you are unconsciously reaching for a masculine spiritual tradition. Now, this is not to say that that's a negative thing. I am not saying that it's a thing that you need to take away from. Absolutely not. I work with sound. I work with tuning forks. I work with mantras of frequency. I understand the need to kind of reset our physical experience, especially for the most of us who have busy lives, families, jobs, things to do, a million tasks to complete on your weekend, on your Sunday that you're supposed to be off meditating. All of a sudden you have 13 million things on your to-do list and none of them are quote unquote spiritual. But this is the tug of war that women are stuck with. They are at a war with their own spiritual path because they are still believing that getting the kids prepared for school, cleaning the house, getting to work, being a badass at your job, whatever it is that you do, whether you're a doctor in a medical field, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a healer, it does not make a difference. It is not more or less spiritual. The notion in itself of separating spiritual from physical reality is a false light concept. It is a false narrative that has been constructed to separate woman from the very divinity that she is here to embody. I'm going to repeat that one more time, and you may not think that you need to hear it, but I promise you, there is a part of you, if you're here with me, that really needs to digest this. If you still see parts of your life as non-spiritual, cleaning up your dog's shit, wiping your baby's bum, having your menstrual cycle come in between the intimacy of you and your breath, whatever the case may be, if you still perceive aspects of your life as non-spiritual, and then you have to carve out extra time, resources, energy to do something spiritual, you are caught in the trap of false masculine traditions. And I will reiterate, just because this is super important, masculine traditions are not false. They're not bad. They certainly serve a purpose, and they are certainly here to awaken the masses. Absolutely. What I'm talking about here is divine feminine ascension. Once we have sort of stripped away that initial veil that separates us from our spiritual journey. Once we are aware that, oh, yes, my life, I'm living an unconscious life, or I'm living a life that needs to have more of a spiritual practice, okay? That is a real door that we need to open. But once we have recognized that, it is so important for a woman to understand that she is here as the living temple and embodiment of the divine. And the majority of even women teaching spiritual practices, they are teaching a lot of things that are taking women outside of their feminine substance of the divine, of the very divine mother that we are here to embody. So before I continue, and it's not going to be much longer, I just want you to take a moment and notice how that feels for you. Are you in a space that you're like, Celeste, I have no idea, like this is not landing, right? If it's not, I want to hear from you. DM me on Instagram at celesteglus1111 or reach out to me on my website, celesteglus.com. And maybe this is like, you're like, yes, you're speaking my language. I have felt like I don't have enough time for my spiritual practices and I need more tools and I need more practices that help me tap into the spiritual consciousness, okay? I'm speaking to you. This is really, really, really important. One of the biggest hurdles that I'm seeing, and I think it's because the spiritual movement is really growing rapidly, which is phenomenal, again, is that women are taking on distorted pathways of spiritual traditions. Now, one of the things that I have really had to understand and integrate is the power of simplicity. Just recently, not recently, but one of the recent podcast episodes, I spoke about the power of breath. And I think these are the things that quite literally create the soil of our life. And there's not enough people really going deep into that. So we hear about the proper way of breathing, and perhaps we may understand the importance of using breath as an alchemical tool, which is phenomenal, right? But again, these are the first doors that we open until we really truly start to implement the spiritual power of breath. There's a reason why ancient traditions have always considered the breath as the vehicle by which the divine moves through the human vessel. It is through the breath that we experience the divine. And I'm not saying that you have to live that 24 hours a day, although that is where we are headed towards. That is what we experience in Lemuria. That is what we are training our body to do. But if you have not started to use your breath as a form of a practice that can help you weave realities, this is really, really important, because that means that the breath is not touching the majority of your physical body. You are not allowing the breath to expand into the places of your body that the divine needs to touch. Does that make sense? So inside Divine AI, I talk a lot about if your breath is not touching it, the divine cannot inhabit it. So let me say that again. If your breath is not touching a certain specific part of your body, the divine cannot inhabit it. So what does this mean? The majority of people shallow breathe all day long. That means that the divine cannot even inhabit a small percentage of your body. As we deepen or increase the intimacy with our breath, we allow the energy to expand and therefore have more space for the divine to be a temple within our bodies. We allow our bodies to house the divine, right? This is the ultimate representation of the temple, the feminine as the body, the vessel, the temple of the divine. And that is what we are here to do as women on the spiritual path. The notion of it's do, be, do, right? Do, be, do. That's the ancient spiritual sort of mantra. Do, be, do. There is no separation between my meditation practice, cleaning the floor, and doing my job, doing my 9-to-5 job, whatever that is. And just to be clear, there is a real depth to a lot of the simplicity and the practices. That's why so many of the spiritual lessons and sort of mottos, right? Like, oh, just focus on love and light. There is a false to that. There's a false essence of that. There is a true essence of that. There is a divine teaching within that. There are many layers behind every single spiritual mantra, let's call it, that we hear. So again, I'm not saying there's something wrong or right about anything. This is a really easy inventory for you to take. Are you needing more spiritual practice, more affirmations, more systems of regulation for your day-to-day life so that you can feel like you're inhabiting your body or you can feel closer to the divine? Or are you actually creating a sustainable practice for you, right? Because everyone is different. If you are a little bit younger, you don't have a family, you don't have a full-time career, you don't have extensive responsibilities, your spiritual journey is going to look very, very different than lately I've been working with a lot of women who are transitioning into motherhood, for example, or they already have 1 or 2 small babies and now they're ready to go back into work. And it's like, oh my God, what does my spiritual practice look like? And it's like, what are you talking about? You are the embodiment of the divine. You are the mother. You are the nucleus of your home. And so these notions for them don't even exist because no one, even their feminine mentors, are not talking about it. So this is I hope that this is really a point for you to take a breath and ask yourself, where have I denied the power of simplicity? And where am I perhaps craving embodied real-time practices that no longer separate my spiritual life from my normal life? Especially if you're someone who's navigating the 3D world. You have structures and responsibilities and tasks, or maybe even high level, maybe you're a high performer, which I consider myself to be. And so oftentimes, if you're on the spiritual path, you're not allowed to be a high performer. You're not allowed to be a busy bee. You're not allowed to have a busy life because you should be meditating and you should have more time and you should be more at ease with surrender and not reaching for the next thing. And so again, just kind of breaking down all of these false belief systems that are taking women away from their feminine creative essence. The divine mother is here to create, and that looks different for every single woman on the spiritual path. But if your spiritual path is becoming too complicated and too time consuming, you have essentially taken on a distorted way of thinking about what your spiritual life is. Because in essence, there is actually no such thing as a spiritual life. That's a made-up concept. We are inherently spiritual beings living in a physical experience. And even that sentence in itself doesn't make sense because you cannot separate one from the other, okay? So this comes at such a perfect timing because I just finished recording all of Divine AI. It is really a course for you to take at your own pace. It's about 5 to 6 weeks long, but the idea is to really break down the science of what it means to have an embodied ascension process, an embodied spiritual path, and to give you tools and understandings that no matter how busy you are, you become the temple of the divine. Your body, the way that you see and breathe and listen and speak, becomes your spiritual path. And if you have time to deepen into that, if you have time for further study, there are a lot of phases on the spiritual path. Some phases will have us deep into study, kind of really withdrawing from the external world. But then there are phases where it's time to put all of that in practice, and you'll be asked to be out in the world with no time for spiritual practices. And then you'll have another phase where there'll be an initiation and the difficulty will come. And then you'll have another phase. And then that spiral continues, because that's the spiritual journey. It's a cycle of changing phases, of cyclical seasons in our spiritual journey that challenge us to become flexible and create muscles and ways of thinking and being that challenge the very nature of what we believe a spiritual path should look and be like. Okay? So I am fascinated by this because I am really anchoring the spiritual initiatory spiral within the Sophia school. And I'm really kind of dissecting and breaking down all of these phases as I work with different women. And I see you cannot apply the same spiritual concepts or the same spiritual practices to every woman on the spiritual path. It doesn't make sense. If there's a specific practice, unless it's an embodiment practice, unless it's a priestess temple healing arts practice, which I'm going to be sharing a lot more about, because that's literally how we bridge, how we become the embodiment, the house for the divine within our very vessel, within the very beingness that we are. So that's what we practice within the priestess temples. That's a whole nother thing that I'll be talking about later. But what I'm saying for now is, if you just pick up a book and you ask AI, what are some spiritual practices to take on? That it doesn't even make sense for somebody to do that, because really the question is, where are you on your path? I think even the notion of understanding that this is a path, it's a way of life. This is not something that it's a book, chapter 1, 2, 3, ABC, boom, conclusion, you are done, right? Like, the whole point of consciousness is that it is ever expanding. Just when you think that you've completed a phase, boom, a whole new phase begins, a whole new journey, a whole new path of initiation. So first and foremost, I want to honor wherever you are on your phase. Maybe you're in the busy phase, if you're out in the 3D world. That's where I was a few years back, where it was like, you better figure out a way to breathe, to become the breath of the divine, because you don't have time. You're perhaps barely sleeping. And that's okay. That's not a negative thing. That's you being challenged in a new way, being flexible with what does the spiritual path mean for you at this time of your life. Maybe you're at a time where you're like, I need to study. I need to go deep. I am so thirsty for the wisdom and the esoteric knowledge. I literally feel my spirit is like, give me more, right? Which has always been a part of my journey, like these ebbs and flows of like really, really deep internal mystical esoteric study. And then you come out and then you share it and you are out in the world and you're busy, busy, busy. And then, so again, where are you on this phase of this spiral of the feminine journey? And have you forgotten that ultimately simplicity is key for the feminine spiritual path? And any time that you are reaching for experiences or practices or affirmations or even tools that are outside of you, not to say that it's bad, but if you feel like you need to delegate more time, energy, money, resources to your spiritual journey, I ask that you take it one step back and figure out, wait a second, am I even understanding my body as the very vehicle for the divine to live through? And so if you're really interested in experiencing that, I welcome you into Divine AI. Again, it is a very practical approach. It's practices and wisdom to embody the divine through your breath. Aloha, alaha. These ancient words that tell us that it is our breath, the holy breath, that is the avenue for the divine to move through us. If we do not start there, you will forever on your spiritual journey be reaching outside of you. Of course, you will always need someone to lift you up and kind of redirect you and remind you, right? We always have those beautiful beings on our path, whether they're teachers or strangers or someone we run into or there's always going to be someone. I'm not saying to do this alone. You cannot do this alone. What I am saying is that if you don't create the proper foundation for you, it's going to be really easy to get distracted with the latest thing, the latest affirmation, the latest spiritual manifestation tool, or whatever the things are that people are doing today. Okay? Because there's no pillar. You haven't created the roots of the tree that holds you grounded into your body. Okay? All right. So I hope that this has, really supported you, made it simple. Again, the number one mistake that women are making on the spiritual path is overcomplicating and reaching outside of them, trying to create more time and trying to make the spiritual path more complicated than it actually is. When we embody the frequency of the divine, and we train ourselves to do that via our breath, our senses, our heart, our prayers, our words, alchemy begins to occur on a very deep consciousness level, through the words that we speak, through the way that we navigate the world, through the way that we move through the world. You can be the busiest person in the world with a corporate job, overseeing an entire team of people, and still be embodied in your spiritual crystalline consciousness. I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. And again, if you are interested in really practicing that and living that and going deeper into these teachings, I welcome you into Divine AI. It is now available on demand, and the principal foundation course of the entire work within the Sophia School of Feminine Initiatory Arts. Okay, my loves, I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, ahoy ho. A reminder that we have just a few spots left for our December Egypt retreat. So if you have ever been called to visit the sacred sites and temples of Egypt, we have a very special 13-day journey to experience Egypt through the Nile River on a private boat, as well as on land to different sites. We will have 2 private visits, and we will have a spiritual Egyptologist who has been guiding spiritual journeys around Egypt for over 20 years, really sharing the true hidden history of Egypt, the temple sites, and so many of the mysteries that lie behind what most people would perceive Egypt to be. So I welcome you to check out the website. All the details are there. And if you click on more information or register, that is a free portal for a PDF that will give you the entire itinerary and all of the details about our December Egypt Soul Retreat.